Marcus, a decorated black Marine, takes his seat at an elite academy's graduation to see his son graduate. Two white security guards confront him with open disrespect, assuming he doesn't belong. In front of an uneasy crowd, Marcus stays calm until a small symbolic action shifts the room's energy and hints at who's really watching. "You don't belong here, old man. Get your black ass up before I drag you out." The words slapped Marcus harder than any boot camp drill ever could. He sat alone, spine straight against the polished mahogany chair at the back of St. Broderick's Academy's Grand Hall, a cathedral of marble arches, its velvet ropes, and centuries-old oil paintings of white men who built this place to keep men like him out. The chandeliers dripped crystal tears above his head. All around him, rows of well-dressed parents whispered, sideys darting between the stage and the Marine, who did not match their polished world. Marcus's dress blues were perfect brass. Buttons shined like small suns, ribbons neat above his heart. On his chest sat 2 decades of loyalty stitched into colored cloth. None of it mattered to the 2 rent-a-cops standing over him with matching buzzkits, matching arrogance, and the same clip tone they used on every undesirable. "Sir, you heard my partner?" the taller guard said, voice thick with casual disgust. "You don't have a seat here. It's no pass, no presence." Marcus didn't flinch. He stared straight ahead. Beyond the guards, the stage buzzed with movement. Rows of young men and women in crisp gowns lined up behind the heavy curtain. In that line was Devin, his boy, his second chance. His proof that dirt-poor beginnings don't always chain a man's dreams to the mud. He lifted his eyes to the guard's chest, read the shiny badge. "McCarthy, I have a seat," Marcus said, voice low, steady, as if every syllable weighed a pound. He slipped a ticket from his pocket, old and slightly folded, but clear enough for anyone with eyes. McCarthy didn't even look. He stepped closer, boot nearly crushing Marcus's. Polished shoe. "You got complaints," he sneered, leaning down so only Marcus could smell the stale coffee on his breath. "Parents feel unsafe. You people loitering around nice places, it don't look good. You people." The words cracked something inside Marcus, but he didn't let it show. He thought of Devin, standing backstage, cap balanced perfectly, on his shaved head. If the boys saw him now humiliated, what lesson would that be? The shorter guard, a jittery one, with red cheeks, and a name tag that read Lewis, snatched the ticket from Marcus's fingers. He glanced at it, scoffed. "Could be fake. We don't take chances." With an ugly smile, he ripped the ticket. In half a sharp tear that echoed in the stunned hush of the hall. Somewhere a mother gasped. Somewhere a camera phone clicked on. Tension spread like spilled ink. Marcus breathed in. His shoulders rose, fell. He bent slowly, picked up the torn pieces. His gloved fingers brushed the marble floor, once polished by servants who looked like him. He rose back up like a tide refusing to stay low. A boy's voice rang from the stage. Muffled but urgent, Devin's dad. "Everything okay?" Heads turned. The principal shot daggers at the stagehand for letting the curtain gap. Marcus didn't answer his son yet. Instead, he slipped his wallet out and opened it, not to show ID, but to show a faded photograph. 7 men in dusty fatigues stood shoulder to shoulder in the desert sun. Sand stuck to sweat and blood. In the middle, Marcus, 20 years younger, grinned wide, an American flag draped behind him. Brothers born not by blood, but by the bullets. They dodged together. Lewis squinted at it. "What the hell is that supposed to prove?" McCarthy snatched the photo, scoffed. "This ain't no history class, Grandpa." He folded the photo in half, then quarters, then shoved it into his pocket. "You can pick this up on your way out." Marcus's jaw tightened. He stood up, now a full head taller than both guards. His eyes swept the crowd, locking eyes with the stunned principal, the clutching mothers, the squirming fathers. Then he looked back at Devin, the boy waiting to see if his father would bow or stand. He didn't bow. Marcus leaned so close that McCarthy's smirk wavered. His voice came out smooth as polished steel. "Call your boss." McCarthy blinked. "What?" "Call your boss," Marcus repeated, louder, so the front rows heard. His voice didn't shake. It filled the high ceiling, bounced off stained. Glass made the old portraits flinch. The oak doors at the back groaned open. Heavy footsteps fell like a drum roll on the marble. 6 men walked in, plain clothes, hard eyes, boots that had known sand and steel. They fanned out behind Marcus like shadows that chose to stand in daylight. The taller guard turned, his face draining to paper white, as he met the eyes of the 6. He saw the same tattoos, the same walk, the same watchful calm that Marcus wore. Like armor, Marcus didn't move, just spoke once, for everyone to hear, for Devin to remember forever. "You wanted me gone?" Better ask them how that ends. He didn't have to say seals. We're in. The room felt it before the word could form. And for the first time since he sat down, Marcus let himself breathe. McCarthy's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Lewis shifted his weight from foot to foot, sweat beading on his temple. The hush in the hall turned heavy enough to press the velvet ropes flat. Others clutched pearls so tight they bit into skin. Fathers pulled their blazers closed, as if a button could shield them from the truth closing in. Marcus stood at the center of it all, silent, immovable. The 6 men at his back, lined up like ghosts who'd stepped out of the old photo. Wore no medals now, no uniforms, just plain shirts, jeans, jackets that hid hard shoulders and the quiet coil of discipline that never fades. But anyone with eyes could see they weren't just ordinary guests. Ramirez moved first, shorter than Marcus but built like he'd never heard of weakness. He stepped up beside McCarthy, who tried to square his shoulders, but only managed to shrink under Ramirez's casual, wolfish smile. "You got a problem with Marines, McCarthy?" Ramirez asked. His voice was gentle, but it carried a blades. Edge.Mick, CARTH, found a shred of defiance. "Sir, this is private property. We have the right to what?" said a second SEAL, a broad man with a faded burn scar on his neck. He spoke softly, but each word snapped like dry twigs under a boot. "Rip tickets? Humiliate a decorated Marine in front of his boy's big day? Who gave you that right?" Lewis tried to speak, but his throat gave out in a pitiful squeak. He stepped behind McCarthy, only half hidden, like a child peeking from behind a bigger kid. The principal at the podium cleared his throat, a nervous, tiny sound that bounced off the polished walls, but didn't reach far. Nothing. He tapped again. Still nothing. Even the old sound system seemed to know its place tonight. Marcus never turned around. He didn't need to. He felt Ramirez's hand rest lightly on his shoulder, a silent promise that, whatever came next, Marcus wouldn't face it alone. "Mr. McCarthy," Marcus said, his voice even and low, carrying past the rows of hushed spectators. "You owe my son an apology." The taller guard blinked. "Your son on that stage?" Marcus said. His eyes didn't waver. "It's the one who just watched his father's respect torn up like trash?" "Make it right." McCarthy's lips moved, but no. Words formed. His fingers twitched at his side, searching for authority that no longer answered when called. He turned toward the principal for help, but the man at the podium looked down, shuffling papers that didn't need shuffling. He would not save them. Broad SEAL with the scar leaned in close enough that McCarthy could smell the desert dust still clinging to him in some invisible way. "Say it." A cough in the third row. A camera flash. The moment spread like fire on dry brush, kids backstage whispering, parents pulling out phones. An entire hall leaning in to watch power shift its coat. McCarthy's shoulders slumped. He turned toward the stage, voice thin as tissue. We apologize for the misunderstanding." Devin stepped out from behind the curtain, cap slightly askew, eyes wide, but burning with something fierce. He held his diploma like a shield and sword in one. Marcus looked at him. No smile, but pride, radiating like heat. "Come here, son." Devin stepped down the aisle, each footfall punctuating the silence. When he reached his father, Marcus laid a heavy hand on his shoulder. The boy stood straight, matching his father's posture, inch for inch. Lewis looked like he might faint. He tugged at McCarthy's sleeve, whispering something that made the taller man flinch. But the SEALs ignored them now. Their eyes swept the rows instead. Making sure everyone understood this scene would not be rewritten by excuses tomorrow, Ramirez leaned in one last time, voice so soft it was almost kind. Next time you see dress blues like his, you salute. McCarthy could only nod. Lewis's face shone redder than the school's velvet curtains. A low murmur rolled through the audience. Not gossip anymore, but a guilty ripple of something like shame. Some heads dipped, some hands loosened on pearl strands. A few fathers actually straightened, silent apology blooming in their throats that they'd never say out loud. Marcus turned slightly, only enough to see Ramirez's small nod behind him. The 6 SEALs stepped back half a pace. They would not overshadow him, not today. He looked at Devin, voice warm steel. Go stand with your class, Lieutenant. Devin's smile broke through at last. Yes, sir. He turned and walked back up the aisle, shoulders squared, chin high. For a moment, no one breathed. Then someone started clapping, a single pair of hands from the back, an older woman in a Sunday hat. The sound spread, row by row, cautious at first, then braver, till the entire hall roared with the thunder of hands. Finding courage again, McCarthy and Lewis stood frozen in the middle of it all. 2 paper guards in a stone fortress suddenly too big for them. And Marcus, the Marine they tried to erase, stood taller than ever, 6 shadows at his back. 1,000 eyes finally seeing what they'd almost missed. The applause rolled through. The grand hall, like a reluctant storm, people clapped because silence would shame them more. One by one, hands found rhythm, matching the steady drumbeat of Marcus's calm gaze. Devin walked the last steps to the stage, cap tilting slightly. With each proud stride, he didn't bother fixing it. A crooked cap felt honest today. The principal fumbled with his microphone, the old system crackling back to life with a whine that made some parents wince. He cleared his throat twice before he found his voice. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, voice brittle as old paper. We thank you for your patience. Let us continue this momentous day for our graduates. His words drifted off as eyes kept flicking toward Marcus, who hadn't moved from his place at the center aisle. The 6 SEALs lingered behind him, their presence as loud as a sermon no one dared interrupt. McCarthy and Lewis hovered by the sidewall now, half hidden in the shadows, pretending to fuss with their radios, but really wishing they could melt through the marble. Devin joined his classmates at the front row, earning quiet nods and a few nervous pats on the back. Some classmates stared like he'd grown wings. Others looked at him with shame in their eyes. They'd laughed at the whispers before. Now they didn't know where to look. Marcus's gaze swept the rows slowly, like a searchlight that made lies and polite prejudice shrink. He caught an older man's eye in the front row, a father in a gray suit, hair slicked back, a girl with the same sharp jawline sitting beside him in cap and gown. The father cleared his throat, leaned forward, whispered something to his daughter. She looked back at Marcus with soft eyes that said, "I'm sorry," without a sound. Marcus gave her a small nod. That was enough. Apology wasn't his to keep. It was for Devin, and Devin already had his own armor now. Behind him, Ramirez leaned in just enough for Marcus to hear, voice dry with quiet humor. This place got fancier since we last dragged you out of trouble. Marcus's lip twitched at the memory. A roadside bar in Kabul. A dozen locals ready to kill him for one wrong word, Ramirez's fists doing all the talking instead. Different. Walls, same truth. Loyalty didn't need permission slips. Try not to break anything today, Marcus murmured back, eyes still forward. Ramirez chuckled, low and warm. Too late. On stage, the principal tried again. Our next valedictorian, Devin Carter. The name struck the audience like a bell. Some families clapped on reflex. Some froze, palms midair. Unsure if clapping made them accomplices in this moment they'd tried to smother with polite walls. Devin stepped to the podium, diploma tucked under his arm. He scanned the sea of faces. His classmates behind him shifted, robes rustling like restless birds. Thank you, Devin said, voice clear as a drill instructor's whistle. Thank you, Principal Waters, and thank you everyone for being here, especially you, Dad. A quiet ripple no one expected. Him to break the script? The principal forced a stiff smile, hands clutching the podium's edges so tight his knuckles whitened. Devin kept going. My father taught me that no man should ever be told where he doesn't belong when he's earned every right to stand. There, he taught me to keep my head up when someone tries to shove it down. And he taught me that when someone tears up what you've earned, you stand taller. The hall held its breath. A mother dabbed her eyes with a silk handkerchief. A boy in the back row whispered to his friend, "Is that his dad?" Seal. And the rumor ran down the seats like fire on dry grass. Devin glanced at the guard skulking by the wall. For a heartbeat, his jaw tightened just like Marcus's had, but he let it go. So today, Devin continued, voice lifting, I stand here because my father made sure I could. I stand here because men who fought beside him stand behind him still. And I stand here because someday, someone in this hall will stand up for someone else. So no father, no mother, no child ever gets told they're less. The principal tried to interrupt with a polite cough. Devin ignored him. Now, Devin, said Grin breaking through the steel in his tone, I think we can get back to these boring speeches, huh? A laugh bubbled up in the back rows, awkward but honest. A teacher near the side stage clapped, starting another ripple. The principal forced a tight laugh, nodding stiffly. Yes, thank you, Mr. Carter. Very inspiring. Let's proceed. Marcus didn't smile, but the corners of his eyes crinkled. Ramirez folded his arms, nodding like a proud uncle. The other SEALs relaxed just a fraction, tension bleeding off their shoulders, but not their watchful eyes. At the edge of the hall, McCarthy leaned to Lewis, whispering, We're done. Lewis shook his head, eyes wide. No, man. We're the ones done. In the seats, parents shifted, some embarrassed, some thinking maybe they'd teach there. Kids something different when they got home. A few kids leaned forward, bright-eyed, seeing something they'd never seen up close. Dignity that didn't ask permission. Marcus stood there. An unmoving monument, 6 brothers at his back, his son on stage, and for once the Grand Marble. Hall didn't feel so small. The principal's voice droned on about scholarships, alumni, and the proud legacy of St. Broderick's. But no one really listened, not fully. The ceremony moved like a half-broken clock now, ticking forward but off-beat. It's never quite in sync with the truth it still hummed under the polished marble and velvet drapes. Marcus stayed standing in the aisle, arms crossed behind his back, boots planted firm on the gleaming floor that had never welcomed men like him. The 6 SEALs fanned out just behind him in a loose semicircle. To the parents in the rows nearby, they looked relaxed, hands in pockets, heads slightly tilted, as if just watching a show. But anyone who'd seen the way soldiers stand at the edge of trouble would know. These men weren't here for the show. Ramirez leaned closer, voice pitched for Marcus alone. This takes me back, you know that? Marcus didn't turn. Stayed fixed on the stage where Devin had rejoined his classmates, diploma tight in one hand. He let out a small grunt, enough to say, Go on. Ramirez grinned at the memory anyway. That colonel back in Kandahar, remember how he tried to toss you off base for speaking your mind in that briefing? Same look on that man's face when the rest of us showed up at his tent. A ghost of a smile touched Marcus's mouth. Except that tent didn't have chandeliers, Ramirez chuckled, folding his arms across his chest. Yeah, and no silk dresses and polite racists pretending they ain't. Here, they whisper behind curtains instead of behind your back. Behind them, the SEAL with the burn scar Haskins shifted his stance. His sharp eyes swept the room, like a lighthouse beam, lingering a second too long on McCarthy and Lewis, who now clung to the sidewall like wet wallpaper. Haskins' jaw flexed once. That was enough to remind the guards that leaving early wasn't an option. Not if they didn't want 6 sets of eyes on their necks until the last diploma was handed out, rows away. A boy no older than 12 tugged at his mother's sleeve. His voice was soft but sharp enough to cut through the hush. Mom, why'd they tell that Marine to leave? The mother stiffened. She glanced at Marcus, at Ramirez, at the guards on the wall, her eyes wide, her mouth working for an answer that wouldn't betray her careful world. It's complicated, sweetie. The boy frowned. He's a hero, right? Like in my games. She, the mother, hushed him, but her cheeks burned with something raw. Shame, maybe. Or something new fighting to be named. Marcus didn't hear the boy. Or maybe he did and tucked it away for later. He breathed slow and even, boots firm on marble, mind drifting to the desert heat. The way sand stuck to sweat in places the academy kids in front rows couldn't imagine. Ramirez tapped his elbow, nodding at the stage. Your boy handled that mic like a general. Marcus didn't respond right away. He watched Devin shift his weight from foot to foot, his eyes never losing that steady gleam. It was the same look Marcus had worn when the colonel's lies tried to bury his platoon's mistakes under silence. Some men broke under shame. Others found new iron in their spine. He did good, Marcus murmured. Ramirez leaned back. Better than good. You think he'll sign up after college? Marcus's jaw ticked. It's his choice. I built that for him, the right to choose. Not orders, not flags, not men barking at him because of his skin. Ramirez nodded. Hey. Quiet respect in his posture. He'll carry you with him, no matter what uniform he wears. At the far end of the hall, the final line of graduates rose. Their gowns swished and shuffled, a nervous chorus of fabric. One by one, they filed toward the stage, names read out by the principal's dry, quivering voice. The words felt empty. Now, stripped of the easy pride they'd once carried, no amount of brass or Latin phrases could paper over what everyone had just seen. How fast the marble walls could crack when one man refused to bow. A woman 2 rows down leaned toward her. Husband. Her voice was low, but traveled in the hush. I didn't know they could just do that to a guest. Her husband adjusted his tie, sweat shining under his collar. They can't, not anymore, I guess. She glanced at Marcus at the quiet mountain with shadows of old wars at his back, and then at her daughter, sitting straight and stiff in her cap and gown. A hint of resolve touched her eyes. Maybe tonight she'd say something new at the dinner table. Maybe not. But the seed had cracked the stone. Near the side wall, Lewis wiped his forehead with the back of his hand. He whispered to McCarthy's voice. Tight as a wire. Think they'll fire us? McCarthy didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the stage where Devin stood, back straight, as his classmates took their turns. It was as if the boy's presence pressed on him harder than any sergeant ever could. Ramirez's voice slipped between Marcus's thoughts one last time. Funny, huh? We spent years fighting ghosts in deserts. Turns out the real fight's always right here in rooms like this. Marcus didn't nod. He didn't need to. The truth sat heavy on his chest, but lighter than lies ever did. He shifted. His boots on marble, the sound of a man who refused to be moved, and around him, the grand hall listened. When the last name was read and the final diploma pressed into trembling hands, the applause came out polite, scattered, a hesitant drum roll over cracked marble pride. Parents stood in small clusters, hugging their kids, fixing tassels, snapping photos they'd hang in living rooms, like trophies of a spotless legacy. But today, that spotless shine felt scratched. Marcus stayed in the aisle as the rows emptied. The 6 seals lingered like shadows stitched. To his back, they spoke little a nod here, a half-smile there, but their presence filled every corner that silence tried to claim. Ramirez cracked his knuckles as if testing old bones. See how quick they forget? Who bleeds for their nice safe? Walls. Marcus's eyes tracked Devin stepping down from the stage. The boy's robe flared at his ankles like a flag in a stubborn breeze. His steps were careful, measured not because he was nervous, but because he wanted every second to land exactly right. By the time he reached his father, half the hall was pretending not to watch. Hey, Dad. Devin's voice held no tremble. He stood tall, the diploma balanced like a shield between them. Marcus took it gently, turned it over in his hands. A crisp scroll wrapped in a blue silk ribbon, the Academy's gold seal pressed deep in the paper. He weighed it like it might vanish if he didn't hold it tight enough. You earned this, Marcus said, voice low enough for Devin alone. Not them. Not these walls. You. Devin's eyes flicked over Marcus's shoulder to the seals. Ramirez gave him a nod, the others offering small, silent salutes. The boy stood straighter under the weight of their gaze, the way young trees straighten under the sun. You didn't have to come. Devin said, a ghost of a grin pushing through the tight line of his mouth. Yeah, Marcus said, his eyes softening. But we did. Somewhere to the right, a group of parents shuffled past. One man in a pinstripe suit caught Marcus's eye, opened his mouth like he might say something brave, then thought better of it. He looked at Devin instead, forced a stiff smile, mumbled, "Congratulations," then hurried his wife and son toward the exit. Devin watched them go, shaking his head. People here, they clap, but they don't see. Oh, they see now, Ramirez said behind him, voice dry as desert wind. They see, kid. That's the problem. Marcus squeezed Devin's shoulder, grounding him in a moment that felt too fragile to hold. Around them, the noise grew, families laughing too loud, teachers posing for photos, the principal ducking behind a cluster of graduates, avoiding Marcus's line of sight like it burned. McCarthy and Lewis still stood by the far wall, heads bent together in urgent whispers. Their radios hung silent at their belts now. The uniforms that had made them lions turned them into paper tigers once the shadows showed up. McCarthy met Marcus's eyes for a heartbeat, then flinched away. Let them go, Marcus murmured. To Ramirez, without looking back, they got enough ghosts tonight. Ramirez only shrugged. Your call. Devin tucked his diploma under his arm. He opened his mouth to ask something, but stopped when a sharp voice cut through the noise. Mr. Carter. Sir, a young man in a crisp suit jogged up the aisle, dodging hugging families. His hair was parted like he'd combed it with a ruler, breath short from trying to look official, too fast. Ramirez stepped forward first, blocking his path with one casual pivot of his shoulder. You lost, son? The young man lifted a trembling hand, palm out, harmless. Name's Daniel's alumni rep. We just want to offer our deepest apologies. For Marcus's eyes narrowed just slightly. Who's we? Swallowed. His clipboard wobbled in his grip. The board, the academy. We didn't. We'd like to invite you to a small reception, a chance to, clear the air. A gesture. Ramirez snorted under his breath. Devin stared at the man like he'd just stepped out of a cartoon. Marcus turned, fully then. The weight of his presence alone made Daniels take half a step back. A gesture, Marcus repeated. The word tasted sour. You think my son's worth a gesture? Daniels shook his head too quickly. No, sir. Yes, Mr. Daniels, Marcus said, voice even but landing like a hammer on stone. I came to see my boy walk that stage. I don't need your canops. And polite lies. Tell your board to save their gestures for someone who wants a photo op. Daniels's mouth opened and shut, his next words dying under Marcus's steady gaze. He tucked his clipboard tighter under his arm, nodded stiffly. Understood, sir. Enjoy your evening. Then he hurried down the aisle as fast as dignity would let him. Devin let out a breath he'd been holding. Think he'll tell the board exactly what you said? Marcus's mouth twitched. If he's smart, he'll tell them less. A laugh that startled a passing teacher. You hungry, kid? Devin nodded, starving. Marcus let his hand rest on his son's shoulder as the hall emptied around them. A father, a boy, 6 shadows, and the echo of marble walls, still learning how to listen. They stepped through the tall oak doors together. Marcus leading Devin. Close by his side, the 6 seals falling into an easy, natural formation that said nothing touches him tonight. The night air slapped warm against skin, still carrying the marble hall's stale chill. Somewhere, a dog barked in the neighborhood beyond the iron gates. The world moving as if nothing had cracked inside those walls behind them. Devin tipped his head back, sucking in a lungful of air like he hadn't breathed properly since stepping onto that stage. Never thought it'd feel so good to leave that place. Marcus hummed, one deep note that said more than words could. He glanced at Ramirez, who was already scanning the small parking lot where 2 security carts sat abandoned. Under a flickering lamp, McCarthy and Lewis were nowhere in sight. They had slipped out a side door, ghosts trying not to look over their shoulders. At the sidewalk, a small knot of people waited, curious locals who'd heard the commotion and drifted closer like moths to porch light. A woman held her phone up, recording without shame.
God.
Two older men in golf shirts leaned on the gate, murmuring to each other like they couldn't quite decide if they'd just seen a hero or trouble dressed in metals. Near the curb, a young reporter stood alone, a badge swinging from her neck. She looked barely out of college, sharp suit jacket too big for her shoulders, notepad clutched like armor. She spotted Marcus immediately, nerves and ambition fighting for space in her eyes. "Mr. Carter," she called out, stepping forward, careful not to block his path but refusing to be ignored. "Do you have a comment about what happened inside?" The guards, the incident. Ramirez stepped forward half a pace, but Marcus raised a hand, a simple sign that he had this. He let the weight of the moment settle before he spoke. Devin shifted closer, listening. The other SEALs spread out. Behind them, silent sentinels in denim and leather jackets. Marcus looked at the reporter, his eyes calm, but carrying the same steel that had melted McCarthy's smirk. "You want a quote?" She nodded too quickly. "Yes, sir, just something." "For the local station, people are going to ask questions." Marcus cut her off with a small shake of his head. What happened in there wasn't an incident. It was a lesson. For them. It's for my son. Maybe for you too. The reporter scribbled, fumbled for her phone. "Can you say what you'd want people to know?" Marcus's eyes flicked to Devin, then back to her. "Tell them the truth. He earned that stage. He earned that chair. If the day ever comes that someone tells your child to leave a place they've earned, you better stand." Exactly where I stood. Ramirez's mouth twitched with approval. The reporter lowered her phone, eyes wide like she'd expected a soundbite, and got something heavier instead. She glanced at Devin, the boy's steady calm, echoing his father's. "Thank you, sir," she managed softly. "I think that's enough." Marcus nodded once, dismissing her with a kindness that said, "Do better with this." She stepped back, nearly bumping into the knot of locals. Some lifted their phones higher, hoping he'd say more. He didn't. A car pulled up at the curb, an old pickup, paint scratched by too many desert roads. Ramirez flicked his chin toward it. "Rides here." Devin looked back at the school's arched doors. Through the glass, you could see the empty foyer, shadows swallowing the marble Marcus's boots had just owned. For a moment, the boy's eyes narrowed. The weight of what he'd seen, still heavy on his shoulders. Marcus clapped a hand to the back of his neck, squeezing once. "You leave it there, son. Those walls don't follow you home." Devin breathed out through his nose. "I know. Just can't believe how fast they switch sides when they're cornered." Ramirez chuckled, opening the truck's passenger door. Truth scares people worse than bullets sometimes. One by one, they climbed in Marcus's last, turning once to meet the stairs. The knight didn't bow to him, didn't clap, didn't whisper apologies. But the night didn't lie either. It stayed exactly what it was. Open. Waiting. Honest. The truck pulled away from the curb. Behind them, the academy gates swung shut with a soft metallic click. The sound of a fortress that thought it could keep him out. "Oh, forced to remember?" The man who'd walked right through it, inside the cab. Devin leaned back, diploma clutched against his chest like a promise no guard could ever rip up again. Marcus watched the street roll out ahead, dark and quiet, ready for whatever waited beyond the next turn. The old truck rattled over a pothole, shock squeaking under the weight of 8 men and years of dust and secrets buried under seat cushions. Ramirez drove, one hand loose on the wheel, the other drumming a silent beat on the cracked dashboard. The radio stayed off. There was no need for music tonight. The words hanging in the cab were enough. Devin sat wedged between Marcus and Haskins, the SEAL with the faded burn scar, whose arm rested on the open window like the wind belonged to him. Every so often, Devin's eyes flicked from the passing streetlights to Marcus's calm profile, trying to read the man he thought he knew, now seen in sharper color. "So," Devin said, voice careful but curious, "did you know they'd come with you?" Marcus didn't look at him, but his mouth curved just enough to hint at an answer. Didn't have to know, just had to sit still long enough. Haskins snorted a laugh, staring at the night slipping past the window. Lying, he knew. Old man never does anything alone if he can help it. Ramirez glanced in the rear view, eyebrows raised. Ain't that the truth? Man once made me drive 40 miles through mortar fire just to stand behind him when he chewed out a full bird kernel. You remember that, Marcus? Marcus's shrug was all dry humor. Didn't trust your aim back then? A low chuckle spread. Through the cab, a warm rumble that pushed back the cold marble ghosts still clinging to Devon's thoughts. He shifted, pulling his robe tighter around him like a blanket that didn't fit anymore. Were you ever scared? Devon asked. The question came out raw, the kind of thing a boy saves for the right moment, the right silence. Marcus let it sit for a moment before answering. Yeah, Ramirez whistled low. He admits it. Mark this day. Devon didn't laugh. He leaned closer. When? Akusa's eyes stayed on the road ahead. He spoke slow, each word dropping like pebbles into deep water. Not when we fought over there. Not when I heard gunfire or saw sand stained red. I was scared when I came home. Scared the fight wouldn't be over. That I'd have to keep proving. Something just to stand in line like everybody else. Haskins shifted, rolling his broad shoulders. Still proving it. Always will be. Devon's fingers drummed on his folded diploma. So why keep fighting? Why not just let them win? Sit. Quiet. Blend in. Marcus turned his head, finally looking straight at his son. The passing streetlights carved shadows across his face, deepening the lines earned in sun and sand. You don't blend with people who want you invisible. You stand where they don't want you to stand, until they learn to move around you. Ramirez let out a bark of laughter that startled a passing cyclist on the sidewalk. That's his favorite line. Been using it on officers and senators for 20 years. Devon smiled, but his eyes stayed serious. And tonight...
You think?
They'll remember? Marcus didn't flinch. Doesn't matter if they do. You will. The cab settled into a hush that wasn't awkward, just honest. Outside, the city drifted by. Gas stations with flickering signs, sleepy houses with warm windows. People inside living tiny lives untouched by marble halls and torn tickets. Haskins tapped Devon's shoulder lightly. Voice rough but gentle. You got your father's spine, kid? Just use it well. Doesn't matter where uniform or suit, classroom or street corner. Devon nodded, words caught behind his teeth for now. The truck turned down a quiet side road, tires crunching old. Gravel as Ramirez eased them toward Marcus's small house on the edge of town, a modest place with a porch light always left on. As they rolled to a stop, Ramirez killed the engine. The silence after the rattling exhaust was deep enough to hear the crickets in the weeds by the mailbox. Marcus clapped his palm on Devon's knee. You did good today. Didn't let your head drop. Devon swallowed, eyes shining with something. He wouldn't let fall tonight, because he didn't. Ramirez popped his door open first. All right, family, meeting's over. Somebody pour me a coffee that doesn't taste like desert dust? Haskins laughed, shoving his shoulder as they climbed out one by one, boots thumping on gravel and dry grass. Devon stepped onto the small patch of yard. A diploma still under his arm, a promise that felt heavier now than when it was handed to him, inside. The porch light spilled gold onto the cracked steps. Marcus paused before climbing up. He looked back once, catching Devon's eye under the wide, quiet night. This, he said, his voice steady as the desert he left behind, wasn't the last fight. It's just the one they'll remember. And Devon, standing there with old warriors and new truths, understood exactly what his father meant. The house smelled like old wood and strong coffee, kind that clung to curtains and jackets for days. Ramirez claimed the rickety kitchen. Chair first, sprawling like he owned the place, boots crossed at the ankles, mug in hand. Haskins leaned against the counter, flipping through a battered photo album someone had pulled from the shelf. Devon sat cross-legged on the worn rug near the coffee table. His graduation robe draped over the arm of the couch like a shed skin. He balanced a chipped plate on his knee, picking at the last piece of store-bought apple pie. His eyes flicked from face to face, soaking in each word like a soldier learning a new battlefield. Marcus moved easily around them, pouring refills. Checking the back door twice out of habit. Even in his own kitchen, the old reflex stayed trust, but verify, then verify again. Ramirez lifted his mug in a lazy salute. You know, You never told him about the colonel and Herat? Marcus raised an eyebrow. He's 15, Devin piped. Up, mouth half full of pie. 17. Haskins barked a laugh, almost groan, then. I can handle the good parts. Ramirez leaned forward, elbows creaking the table. Your dad once told a full-bird colonel to shut up and sit down in front of half the Afghan base. Had a rifle pointed at him 2 seconds later. Devin's eyes widened. What happened? Shot Ramirez a warning look, but let it slide. What happened is, if you say the truth loud enough, sometimes the man with the gun remembers he's got ears. Haskins flipped the album to an old photo. Marcus, in desert camo, grinning under dust and sweat. Ramirez beside him with a busted lip. Haskins blurred in the background, flipping the camera off. He held the album out to Devin, tapping the faded edge. See this? That's who watched your back before you were born. Devin traced a finger over the cracked plastic sleeve. Did you ever think about not coming home? Marcus leaned back against the sink, arms folded across his broad chest. The porch light outside spilled a pale glow through the cracked blinds, catching the deep lines at the corners of his eyes. He answered slow, voice low enough that the old fridge's hum almost swallowed it. Some days you don't think at all. You just move, breathe, push forward. Then one day you wake up, boots still muddy, and you realize home's not a place. It's the people who'd follow you anywhere. Ramirez raised his mug. Ain't that the truth? Devin looked from his father to the men spread out like unspoken walls around him. So tonight, you all showed up because that's what we do, Haskins cut in, tone firm, but not unkind. No man stands alone when we can stand with him. Silence settled for a moment, a warm hush stitched together by old scars and fresh memories. Marcus crossed to Devin, lowered himself to the floor so their eyes met level. You remember what happened tonight? Rokas asked. Devin nodded. Yeah. Marcus held his gaze steady. They'll tell you it wasn't that big, eh? Deal, they'll say, people overreact. That you imagined it. But you didn't. You stood on that stage because you earned it. And when someone tries to take your place again, you stand twice as tall. Devin's throat bobbed. What if they don't listen? Marcus's eyes crinkled, the faintest smile breaking through the steel. Then you make them. Ramirez tapped the rim of his mug against the table, punctuating the promise. That's it, no marching orders. Just stand. The rest sorts itself out. Haskins slipped the album shut, setting it down with care. If you need backup. Know where we are. Devin looked at each of them. Scars, smiles, tired eyes that missed nothing. In that small kitchen, the world felt bigger and smaller at once. He swallowed the last bite of pie like a vow. Marcus pushed himself to his feet, ruffled Devin's hair, the way he hadn't done in years. All right, Lieutenant, bed. Big day tomorrow? Devin stood, grin soft but solid. Yes, sir. He left his robe on the couch, diploma still tucked in the inside pocket. The SEALs watched him disappear down the narrow hallway, their eyes softening just a shade. Ramirez drained his mug, stood with a creak of old knees. He'll be all right, Marcus. Marcus nodded once, flipping the porch light switch off and on again, a habit from years of checking perimeters in places that didn't forgive mistakes. He will, Marcus said. As long as we're watching, in that small kitchen with old friends and fresh promises, the night outside stayed dark, but inside, the light held strong. The house settled into its late-hour creaks, wood shifting, pipes sighing, the wind brushing dry leaves across the porch. Devin's door stayed cracked just enough for Marcus to hear his soft, even breaths, proof the boy's dreams were his own tonight, unbothered by marble floors or torn tickets in the living room. The SEALs claimed whatever space they could. Find Haskins sat sideways in Marcus's old armchair, boots kicked off, socks mismatched, one black, one gray. Ramirez perched on the armrest, a half-empty mug of coffee balanced on his knee like it might spill but never did. The others spread out on the couch and floor, bodies that had once curled up under Humvees and Desert Stars now resting under the quiet hum of a tired ceiling fan. Marcus stood by the window. arms folded, eyes fixed on the patch of yard bathed. In porch light, the night beyond it was black, but the light claimed just enough space to remind him why this small house mattered more than any metal pinned to his chest. Ramirez broke the hush first. Voice soft but sharp as gravel under a boot. "Heel. You think they'll come back at you for this? Some board vote, a letter, polite threats?" Marcus didn't turn. "Probably," Haskins grunted. "They'll call it a misunderstanding, an error in protocol." Ramirez scoffed. It's fancy words. "For the same old rot? Man stands where they say he shouldn't. Suddenly everybody wants an apology from him." Marcus's shoulders rose, fell a breath that carried too many nights like this. Too many rooms filled with men trying to make sense of a world that never paid them back in full. Doesn't matter. Devin knows the line now. Knows not to. Flinch. Haskins leaned forward, elbows on knees, burned scar catching the lamp's dim glow. "You taught him well." "What?" "But he's still just a kid." Marcus's jaw tightened, softening only when a floorboard creaked behind him. Devin may be shifting in his sleep. He kept his voice low enough that the boy wouldn't hear. "That's why we did it tonight. So, the next time, he's not alone." At the front door, wondering if he should ring the bell or kick it in, Ramirez lifted his mug, tilted it in a lazy toast. "And if he needs us, we're here. We don't disappear just 'cause you hang up your stripes." Marcus's eyes flicked to Ramirez's reflection in the window glass. "We never disappear. That's the problem." Haskins barked a quiet laugh. "Problem for them, not for us." The front porch light flickered once, twice, an old bulb threatening to give up. Ramirez slid off the armrest, crossed to the window, shoulder bumping Marcus's as he leaned in. Together they watched the empty yard, same as they'd once watched. Desert roads for silhouettes that meant trouble? Sometimes I wonder, Ramirez murmured, why we keep fighting the same fight. Marcus's voice came out like gravel, shifting under old boots. Because they keep hoping we'll sit down. Ramirez nodded, humming a low agreement. Tonight felt good, though, watching McCarthy shrink like that. It's almost made me wish we'd dragged him out front. Marcus's mouth twitched. It wasn't about him, or Lewis, or that kid with the clipboard. Haskins's voice rumbled from the armchair. Then what was it about? Marcus turned from the window, facing the menhood, followed him through mortar blasts and midnight raids. It was about the ones watching, the kids in those rows. The parents who will lie awake tonight, wondering if they've got the spine to stand when it's their turn. Ramirez crossed his arms, grin sharpening just enough to show old teeth. And when they don't? Marcus's reply came quick, solid. As a door slammed against wind, then we stand again, till they learn. The hush settled deeper, but it wasn't heavy, more like a promise stitched into old fatigue. Haskins closed the album on the coffee table, the soft clap of its cover. A punctuation mark on words unsaid. Outside, a stray car rumbled down the street. Headlights sweeping the yard before vanishing into the night. The porch bulb held steady, fighting off the dark. Ramirez checked his watch out of habit. Though no one here cared about Dawn's clock, you want us to stay? Make shifts on the porch like the old days? Marcus's grin was almost too tired. To show? Go home, Ramirez. I got the first watch. Haskins rose, stretching stiff shoulders. Next time it's my turn. Ramirez drained his mug, set it in the sink without a clatter. He clapped Marcus's shoulder on his way to the door. The same clap he'd given him outside Bagram when a chopper waited, with no promises, but plenty of ghosts. We'll always stand, brother, long as you do. Marcus watched them file out. Boots thudding on the porch he'd built himself, planks that knew every secret he carried. He stood in the doorway when the truck engine turned over, its rumble fading down the block inside. The house creaked again, floorboards, pipes, old, walls holding new memories. Marcus flicked the porch light off, then back on. A habit, a promise, a warning. He turned once more to the hall where Devin slept, nodded once to the quiet, then faced the window again, a lone figure in an old shirt and tired boots keeping the long watch so the next one wouldn't have to. The sun hadn't fully broken the horizon when Marcus's boots touched the marble steps again. This time there was no ceremony, no velvet rope, no guards at the side door pretending the world hadn't shifted under their polished shoes. Just dew on the stone, soft light catching the cracks too small to patch overnight. He stood with his hands tucked in his jacket pockets, chin lifted just enough to read the engraved motto over the academy's tall doors: excellence, honor, legacy. Words carved by hands that never carved space for him until he took it himself. A soft shuffle behind him made him turn. Devin, still in jeans and a plain hoodie, eyes wide awake in that sharp new way. He held 2 paper cups, the steam curling in the cold dawn air. "Didn't think you'd come back here," Devin said, handing him the coffee. Marcus took it, letting the warmth sink through skin, still carrying last night's weight. "Didn't think you'd be up this early," Devin shrugged, half grin, tugging at the edge of his mouth. "Couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts." Marcus chuckled once, low and short. "Good. Means you're paying attention." They stood, shoulder to shoulder on the steps that had tried to push one of them off just hours ago. Above them, the rising sun turned the motto gold, making the words shine brighter than they deserved. Devin took a slow sip, eyes flicking over the empty quad, the flagpole that hadn't yet felt the wind. "So, now what? Do we just back to normal?" Marcus studied him, watching how the question settled in his shoulders. "Normal doesn't come back. You don't get to fold it up and put it on a shelf." Devin shifted, towing a small crack in the marble under his sneaker. "They'll pretend nothing happened, right?" "Some will," Marcus said. "Won't. Sleep the same way again. That's enough." Devin frowned. "It feels like it's not enough." Marcus let a small smile break through, the kind that carried more pride than any diploma. "It isn't. That's why you stand again when the next door tries to shut." Devin looked at the double doors, tall, dark wood, brass handles gleaming with early light. He pictured McCarthy's hand wrapped around his father's arm, the cold order to leave. He pictured 6 shadows moving like ghosts behind marble pillars. Then he pictured himself not backing down. "You ever get tired of it?" he asked softly. "Standing where they don't want you?" Marcus turned, really facing him now, seeing every edge of the boy who looked more like him than he'd ever admitted. "Every damn day. But tired don't get to decide who you are." Devin's grip on the paper cup tightened, knuckles paling. "What about me? What if I get tired?" Marcus reached out, broad palm landing on Devin's shoulder, not heavy, but grounding. "Then you rest. And when you stand again, you stand taller. That's all a man can promise himself." A bird landed on the flagpole, wings fluttering in the hush before morning claimed its noise. For a moment, the campus felt like any other patch of grass and stone not holy, not untouchable, just another place that would remember Hood. Walked its steps when nobody wanted them to. Devin breathed out through his nose. "I thought graduating would feel like a finish line." Marcus let out a low laugh. "It's a door, son. One they almost slammed shut on you. Pushed it back open. Remember who pushed it with you?" Devin nodded. A small, quiet nod, the kind men like Marcus trusted more than any promise shouted over flags and drums. The sun crept higher, warm light spilling down the steps, brushing the soles of Marcus's boots. He tipped his cup toward the carved motto. "Above. You see that word? Legacy." Devin's gaze rose, reading the letters again, slower this time. Marcus's voice was rough but steady. "Legacy ain't marble. It ain't medals or plaques. It's who remembers you stood when standing cost something." Devin looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time saw the years that lived in the lines around his father's eyes, the battles fought with silence and with words sharper than any bayonet. "Is that why you came back here?" Devin asked. "To remind them?" Marcus tilted his head, eyes scanning the empty courtyard one last time. "Not them?" Devin raised an eyebrow. "Then who?" Marcus turned, lifting his coffee in a lazy salute toward the steps. "You." Devin let out a breath, a smile cracking through the weight on his chest. "So, breakfast." "What?" Marcus laughed, A deep, real laugh that made the quiet campus feel like any other street they'd walked side by side. Yeah, let's get out of here before they wake up and ask us to leave again. Together, father and son stepped down the marble that had once tried to stand taller than them. With each step, the stone felt less like a wall and more like a path. Behind them, one they'd cracked open for whoever came next. And as the sun rose higher, it caught their shadows stretching long across the steps, unbent, unbroken, unafraid.